Thank you, Count Corla. And as a Taoiseach from Cork, I thought it was appropriate to say a few words to, of course, offer my sympathy to Donal Creed's family, many of whom I know very well, but also I think to honour him today, because that's really what this is about. Not many of us in this House can represent constituents for almost a quarter of a century. That's what Donal Creed did in two different constituencies. Very few people in this House will have fought 8 general elections and won each of them. That's what Donal Creed did. Very few of us in this House have the privilege of getting to the very top of local electoral politics, as he did when he was chair of Cork County Council, which, believe me, you don't achieve unless you are respected across party as well as within your own party, as well as serving here, as I said, for 24 years, and also have been in the European Parliament in really the formation years of that Parliament. Not surprisingly, he served in the Agricultural Committee there, and as ever made an insightful contribution to EU political thinking on agriculture, as well as, of course, representing Ireland's interests. He was a Minister of State, actually, on 3 occasions, through a very volatile period, as Deputy Martin referred to. I can remember that period as a child, because my own father won a seat, lost a seat, and won a seat again over the space of 3 years. And I can remember what that was like in a political family in terms of wins and losses. But can I say he was a Minister of State for school buildings and sport, which has been referred to, and at the end of that period managed to get government to agree to the setting up of the National Lottery, which of course a lot of people have referred to because it was a significant achievement. But it wasn't easily done at the time, and it took typical Creed steeliness and determination to insist on winning that argument, which he did. And I think we have hundreds of millions of euros of benefit from that across the country in virtually every town and parish as a result. He was also Minister of State for Housing for a short period of time, and Minister of State, as was mentioned earlier, in 1981 for Health, briefly. 2 pretty tough briefs now, housing and health, but no problem at the time to Donal Creed. Can I say he remains a much-loved figure across Cork. I think partly because of the fact that he represented 2 constituencies at different times, 2 different constituencies. But still, when you canvass rural parts of Cork, people will talk to you about and tell you stories about Donal Creed coming into the farmyard, whether they're Fianna Fáil people, Fine Gael people, or something else. He is one of the few politicians. Okay, well, Sinn Féin or Labour, all right? Given the day that's in it, I didn't want to give you much recognition. But there are very few people in politics, particularly people actually who are in politics for 24 years, who actually leave politics with absolute respect, and who still don't have anybody speaking badly about them. But he was one of those unique figures. In many ways, from the politics of a different time, in some ways. He was rural, very rural, pragmatic, but really ambitious for Cork, and like all of the Creeds, was insightful, really smart, and really tough when he needed to be. And that is a trait that we see now in his son, a colleague and friend of mine in Cabinet, at a tough time for the country when it comes to agriculture and leadership in that crucial sector for our rural economy and indeed for our economy as a whole. And I think Donal, would be extraordinarily proud of the contribution that Michael is making at a time of potentially great peril for the agricultural industry and family farming across the country, given the links and concerns and vulnerabilities to Brexit. Can I say also that, like the Taoiseach, I'd like to maybe quote Marcella, who spoke about her father at a very sad funeral and a very sad period for that family given that 7 weeks earlier Claire passed away in a very untimely way. But she said of her father, first of all, that he had a life well lived, and I think that is true, and it's reinforced from all statements here today. But she also said, which I thought really summed him up from everything I've heard about him, she said her father was always at heart a farmer who loved both the land and nature, but who also took enormous pride in being elected by the people of Cork North West to represent them in the Dáil from 1965 to 1989. And in some ways that sums up who he was, an incredibly modest man who loved the land, who loved walking the land, who loved cultivating the land, particularly in his retirement with his children and grandchildren, but somebody who also quietly at times but very firmly made a huge impact on public life. And that is being recognised today. So I want to say to his family, to Madeleine, of course, but also to Marcella, to Michelle, Madeleine, Suzanne and Louise, and of course to Michael, that they have a lot to be proud of, as indeed do Fine Gael, in terms of the contributions of the Creed family, but in particular Donal. There is an interesting political connection with my own family, in fact, because Michelle, Donal's son, actually nominated my father to stand for politics, and Claire, the late Claire, nominated me at convention as well. So the connections between the Creeds and the Coveneys politically have been strong and have been personal, and that's why I'm so pleased to honour an extraordinary individual this morning.